Hello everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing the first time in my life panel moderation, and I thought it would be great to ask the panelists to prepare a pecha kucha. Do anybody knows what is a pecha kucha? No. Pecha kucha is a fast-paced presentation format. It's from Japan. And you have 20 slides, and each slide you talk just 20 seconds, and we don't wait. And even when he doesn't stop, when it doesn't finish with the picture, talking about the picture, we go forward. And so he has to change his attitude, and also has to put the story on the picture. I think it's a very entertaining format to present the idea. And the idea was as well not to present what they do, and that they are all creative, this we know, and that they're all working pretty hard, this we know, and probably know as well for whom they work, or maybe they work for themselves. But we were asking more the question what they think is art in games, or games with art, and what is the personal idea. How they approach this problem, even if it's a problem, I don't know. We have wonderful guests here, and thank you for this interview. It was very good. I didn't understand anything. Maybe we can repeat this in Berlin, to make a kind of an interview in Berlin at the Amaze Berlin Festival. Maybe we can talk later about this. It would be great. In English, please. I'd like to welcome here on stage with me Dino Dini, game designer, programmer. He's a specialist in football games, I've read, that's right. And his titles are like Kick-Off, Player Manager, Dino Dini's Goal. And I always was asking myself, is it an artist name, Dino Dini? No? Is it an artist name, Dino Dini?
No! It's a real name, guys.
It's an amazing name.
Take the microphone.
Now he teaches... Okay, sorry. I'm not finished yet. Now he teaches game programming at the NHTV Breda University of Applied Sciences. And he likes to do more games by himself, right? If you have time. Cool. Welcome, Dino Dini. On the other side, there is Mario von Rickenbach. He's from Switzerland, and he's game designer and interaction designer. And he's very well known for his artistic and celebrated games in the whole indie world. His titles are like Rakete, Crowdscape, and Mirage. Please welcome Mario von Rickenbach. And on my side, David Calvo, did I say it right? From France. He's a writer and a game developer. He works at Ankana, and releases regular own titles, like the last title in 2013 was Starlay. Very good. Please welcome. So, title is Make Art with Games or Game with Art. I'd like to have you as the first presenter, Dino Dini, and you just can stay here. Because I have to press every 20 seconds. I have to press myself because I didn't find the program. Oh, okay, you have to see the slides as well. Okay, then stay beside me or. It's a little bit improvised, but are they? Yes, now the phone to find out. Sorry.
World's most expensive
stuff. We start just.
Dino, come on the light, please. Come in the light. Thank you.
think we'll be right. I might have to move a bit more in the front, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. Are you ready?
I guess so.
Ready? Go!
Okay, my name is Dino Dini, which is my real name. I've got Italian parents. Okay, I'm going to talk to you. I'm an indie game developer. I'm going to talk to you about games and art. I'm kind of passionate about both. And when I was practicing this, I had a clock. And I don't have it right now, so I'm kind of now waiting, as you are. When it's always correct. Video games and art is the topic that I want to discuss here. Are video games art? A very important question. Because it also affects the way that we're treated by governments and things like that. And I've been wondering about this for a very long time. I think they're art. I think by the end of it, I'll convince you that they're art too. And if you really believe that they're art, then you'll have maybe an argument that you can use. What is art is a very good question to ask, though, if we're going to discuss this. Of course, this has been discussed by philosophers throughout the centuries. I'm going to give you a definition of art, because I'm that arrogant. Maybe you won't like it, but I don't think you can really disagree with it. At least I haven't found anybody yet who's convinced me that it's wrong. So this tried and trusted definition of art is about to turn up in approximately 10 seconds. We'll see what you make of it. Right, here it comes. Art is a meaningful communication that is not solely intellectual. Try it out. Maybe you don't like it at first, but believe me, it does work. It's useful. Most definitions that are good definitions are actually useful. This will help you decide whether something is art or isn't art. So I'm going to try and apply this with a few examples. For example, the statement itself, art is meaningful communication that is not solely intellectual. That statement by itself has zero art component. Could we agree on that? I mean, it's a purely intellectual statement. So with my philosophy here, that's definitely not art at all. On the other hand, the exclamation mark over there, we could argue that that has an artistic component. It is communicating something meaningful, but not entirely in an intellectual way. When you see the exclamation mark, it's going to make you react in a certain way. So I would say there is some art in the exclamation mark, no art in the statement. Here's another example. That is everything you need to know about music theory if you're a guitarist, apparently. And you should start with the bottom things and work your way up. It's talking about an art form, but is entirely intellectual. There is no actual art contained within that. On the other hand, you could switch to this guy, who's one of the greatest jazz musicians who ever lived. And when you listen to him playing his music, I would argue that he is communicating something meaningful, but clearly not intellectual. It is way beyond that. It's way beyond intellect. It's definitely art. So this is another example of not art, of course, an encyclopedia, a collection of intellectual material. The art content in that encyclopedia is going to be very low as an art form. It may contain art, it may talk about art, but in itself, it isn't an art form. On the other hand, we've got, now forgive me here, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, scattering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle in the Milky Way, they stretched in a never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. It's text, but it's art. More than just intellectual communication. Is this a pile of bricks or something more? This was the question that was raised in the 1970s when the Tate Gallery exhibited this as art. Well, we're going to apply my philosophy to this. The question, is it just a pile of bricks, is definitely an intellectual focus. And if this is just a pile of bricks, it is not art. So I think that's fairly clear, isn't it? It is not art. However, there is a problem, fortunately, because I'd like to call that not art. We cannot, because is there something more? That something more is the fact that this work of art created such anger that there was actually somebody who came with a bucket of paint to deface this thing. It created a lot of outrage. Well, if it created a lot of outrage, it was communicating something meaningful beyond the intellectual, and so unfortunately, it is art. We can actually say that everything that we do can lie on two axes. There is the intellectual axis and there's the art axis, and I've kind of randomly tried to distribute different things like that. Painting, mostly art, some intellect, newspapers, very little art, mostly different range of intellect depending on which paper you read. What you can do is draw a line and say, if the thing that you do is on the vertical axis above the red line, it is art. So I think that kind of works for me. Painting is mostly art, architecture has art, newspapers not really art. Where do games lie on this? So, any moment now, I would say games are something like this, on average. You can certainly have games that are not art, but I think the majority are. The reason being that they communicate something more than the purely intellectual. I think this is intuitive and obvious, is it not? It is, after all, a form of play that creates within people some kind of feeling that you cannot intellectualize 100%. So here's a checklist for whether your game is art or not. Is there meaningful communication, point one, and point two, are there sufficient non-intellectual components to that communication? If the answer is yes to both of these, then congratulations, your game is art. There is, of course, more to this. Here are narrative, painting, architecture, animations, choreography, cinematography, and music are all undeniably considered art forms, and they all contribute to video games as being art. So I think, they all communicate things beyond the purely intellectual. But there's one thing more, because video games are also have this component of gameplay design. Ralph Costa might call it ludomography. I call it ludomography. I like it. It communicates something beyond purely the intellectual just through the gameplay design itself. So therefore, QED, no doubt about it, games are art.
Now we move on, or do anybody has a question to Dino?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Je pose en français ou en English? I'm Alex from Studio Clubs. Your definition is very good, but it catches also other forms of expression, like advertising, for example. Because the meaning is so, and maybe I don't know the exact term, but many other. So, what do you think about it?
Well, I would argue that advertising, if it communicates something beyond purely the intellectual, it is art by definition, by my definition. So even though it might be distasteful to think that something that is purely there to manipulate, I would have to argue it is art. An artist is a manipulator of often emotion, so I'd have to call it art anyway.
A human message can be also a way of communicating something that is not intellectual. When you have a back pain or something, you go to have a message.
Well, it's got to be a communication. You could say that it's because your shoulder is communicating with you something, but I mean, that's getting a bit weird, right? So it's not enough that there's something non-intellectual, there must also be a meaningful communication.
Anybody else? One question?
In your graphic, you seem to say that television was kind of art, but it wasn't the case for the newspaper. You think the newspaper are too intellectual to create some art?
It's just a generalisation. I would say generally newspapers are full of intellectual information, and so they tend not to be art. With TV, it was about split 50-50, because there's some TV which is art and some that isn't, but it's not like hard and fast. It was just a kind of an idea. And video games can be anywhere in there, for example, but I think they tend to be in that sort of area that I was highlighting, if that makes sense.
Kelley?
Yeah. Just want to know what is for you the down part, the games which are not art. Which kind of games?
What kind of game? Well, again, I'm not thinking of any individual game. Well, maybe Words with Friends, right, would be an example of a game that probably has a very low art component. It is an intellectual game. You could say the same thing about chess. I know that chess is not a video game, but basically if the game doesn't have a strong or a clear communication beyond the intellectual, then yeah, it's...
Okay, so in a way, too many gameplay can
Yes, I think so. I think so. In fact, something that will show that is a game like Journey. But Journey is a masterful art game, in a sense. It's very, very strong on the amount of non-intellectual communication in it. But in order to achieve that, they actually toned down the game mechanics. It's kind of a very interesting point. It's almost like the two things can be in conflict. So I suppose if you simplify your game, it can make it easier for it to be art. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, we go further with Mario von Rickenbach. Thank you for the questions. You can ask later questions from the camera. Okay, are you ready? Steady?
Yeah.
Go!
Okay, I am Mario von Rickenbach. This is stuff I do, for example. I'm a game maker and I also teach at the University of the Arts in Zurich sometimes. So if you ask me if games are art, I probably do this, what you see in the next picture. I don't know.
Okay, we have to start again. Sorry for this technical problem. Now we have to wait 20 seconds.
If it works, it's not playing.
It's not playing.
Maybe you can just...
Do you like to ask some more questions? Yes, sorry.
Okay, you can go... Oh. So my talk is about presentation technology.
Okay, you want to start again?
No, it's okay.
Okay, now we can start. Yo, it's working.
Could just go to the next slide.
Okay, next slide.
So if you ask me if games are art, this is probably my reaction. I don't really think that's a very important question. It's just that it doesn't really matter. It's for people that talk about stuff, but not for people that actually make stuff. So if you think about art in the context of games, it doesn't really mean anything because it really depends on who you ask for if it's art. So if you ask a game artist, like a guy that makes zombies like this, he says he's an artist, he makes game art. If you ask somebody of a art scene who thinks about games, he probably thinks about making art for museums or making art installations which are playful. So, and even other people think about making games about if games are art. So, like you may know this art game by Bar. So, I think many people, intelligent people, talked about this topic already many centuries. I don't really think we have to repeat this again. 20 seconds are pretty long.
Yeah.
I think discussing about art when talking about games is mostly very distracting from the actual content of the games. I think it's much more important to talk about what makes games interesting, how do we make good games. And there are some practical reasons why we should put games in art context. Like for example, if you talk about some infrastructure, like in the next slide, art has a lot of infrastructure, like museums, organizations, and also money in it. And if we put games in this context, we can use all this infrastructure. So there is this practical use of it. So we also have, it also helps us to reach this. You go back.
No. I went forward.
Okay.
This is back, this is forward.
Okay. So I think it's also good to say art to games if you want to reach a different audience. I mean, if you say I'm showing art somewhere, it's and it's also good for having these institutions support games so we can do something professionally without selling a game so we can eat. I think money is also important in there because like 70% of talks at GDC are about money, I think, or at least partly. So if you take this time and think about other things, you can make just better games. And if you think games are art, then you have this time. So what should we talk about? I think there are more important themes or topics like design. I think most of the things we do when we're making games is designing. So of course you're programming also, but design is what you actually do the work. And with design, I don't only mean the game design part, which is considered making the mechanics and everything. It's also like the design of the experience, how it works, how it looks, how we interact with it, and everything. I think that's much more important to talk about than if games are art. Another important thing to talk about is games that show things that only can be shown in games, like games that have their theme in the mechanics. So like Papers, Please, which you should know if you don't. It's not just a conventional game disguised as something different. It has this theme, what it is about in the mechanics in there. And also we should think about games that doesn't make us feel stupid. Games that value our time, and we also should think about games that show different perspectives, or games that are made by people who have different perspectives. anything. I think all these things are much more important than knowing if games are art or not, because that's just an intellectual discussion and not really something that helps us make better games. So I think we should focus on making good games, and if at the end we make art with it, that's okay, that's good, and there are practical reasons, like I said, but at the end, I don't care.
Good. Any questions for Mario? No, then I have to be quick for David's presentation. Do you like Pechakucha? We have two more. So please welcome on stage David.
Yes. J'avais prévu de parler en anglais, mais j'ai parlé en français en fait, ça me fait chier. Donc ça c'était moi, il y a 12 ans, 24 heures avant ma première masturbation. J'étais en train de dessiner des trucs cool. Je faisais des comics à l'époque, voilà. J'espère me prendre juste derrière. C'était à peu près pareil en fait. Il y a une prolongation assez logique du truc. Mes comics c'était des monstres géants qui mangeaient des gens au Club Med. Ça c'était moi hier, 10 bonnes minutes avant que je me branle. Je continue à faire des trucs cool quoi. En général, ma vie c'est ça, c'est-à-dire que je passe mon temps à faire des trucs qui servent à rien. C'est-à-dire que je dessine des choses que les gens ne voient pas et je fais des jeux que les gens ne jouent pas. Des fois les livres se vendent, ça dépend, ça arrive de temps en temps quoi. Voilà. Entre ces deux, j'ai fait ça. C'est-à-dire que j'ai fait, je sais pas, 10 bouquins, 20 BD, 15 jeux que j'ai fait ou que j'ai aidé à faire évidemment, des poèmes, plein de trucs quoi, vraiment qui servent à rien non plus. Quoi. Voilà. Je crève de faim d'ailleurs, d'ailleurs c'est arrivé. Moi j'ai un problème, c'est que je peux pas parler d'art et de jeux parce que je sais absolument pas ce que c'est l'art, quoi, j'en ai rien à foutre. Ça c'est ce que je fais en général, moi je peux pas diviser ce que je suis et ce que je fais ou ce que je vis, c'est peut-être un problème pour certaines personnes, mais moi c'est comme ça que je fais. Voilà, donc c'est un peu... c'est des bouts de moi que je mets dehors comme ça, j'arrache mon ventre, que je jette dehors, comme ça, tout dégoulinant. Et je me suis jamais vu comme un artiste, parce que déjà, un artiste, on décide d'être artiste ou pas, voilà, moi je me vois plutôt comme la grenouille au milieu là. C'est un peu ridicule, c'est ça, quoi. Je joue de la trompette en pétant, quoi. Voilà, c'est à peu près ça. Il faut que je regarde mon texte parce que comme je l'avais écrit en anglais, des fois je me pomme. Alors bon, il y a des artistes que j'adore évidemment, alors dans Herzfeld, Kate Bush, je vais essayer de comprendre comment ça fonctionne et je vous explique vraiment d'où je suis parti pour créer, hein. C'est-à-dire vraiment c'est un processus de vomi, quoi. Hein. Voilà, et au bout d'un compte on devient une espèce de Circé, une espèce de magicienne, on décide de dire oui mais en fait non c'est pas simplement du vomi, c'est un truc très bien fait, c'est destiné, c'est de la chimie, c'est machin. On se met un petit peu des étiquettes comme ça, on se rassure en fait en croyant qu'on fait des choses intéressantes, quoi. Voilà, puis on renverse les verres. En général sur nous, quoi. Voilà. Donc ça c'est moi à 60 ans, 70 ans, j'espère. Moi j'étais beaucoup trop paresseux pour être archéologue, j'étais beaucoup trop paresseux pour faire de l'histoire de l'art. Moi tout ce que je voulais c'était essayer de comprendre les mystères de la vie, essayer de comprendre ce qui était plus loin que moi, quoi, qui était au-delà de moi, quoi. Voilà. Et je me vois comme ça, une espèce de génie du mal, Morgoth ou Darkseid, voilà, c'est quelque chose qui est entre la mégalomanie, l'égocentrisme et le psychopathie sociale, quoi. Ouais, c'est à peu près ça. Je sais pas quand je sais plus ce que je dis là. Ouais. Bon, d'accord, je vais repasser. Je suis psychopathe, social, machin, je suis où ouais, voilà, donc globalement, moi, tout ce que je vois dans ces histoires-là, c'est d'essayer de toucher l'invisible. À un moment donné, ce processus d'assimilation et de régurgitation, c'est quelque chose qui est nécessaire pour essayer de trouver autre chose qui soit mon propre ventre. C'est d'essayer de voir une espèce de qualification de l'invisible. Et les jeux, parfois, y arrivent. Alors bon, il m'a croppé l'eau, c'est dommage, quoi. Mais bon, ça, c'est mon jeu préféré. Et pourquoi? Parce que c'est un jeu qui m'a montré qu'il y avait quelque chose de plus grand que le jeu, quoi, tout simplement, quoi. Et ça m'a fait prendre conscience d'un truc très simple, c'est que pour moi, les jeux, c'est quelque chose, le terme de jeu, c'est quelque chose d'assez ridicule. Et on a tendance à se masquer, pour moi en tout cas, là je vous parle vraiment de trucs hyper perso, hein, que en fait les jeux c'est des artefacts, les livres c'est des artefacts, tout ça c'est des machins, c'est des produits pour les projets occidentaux, quoi, on s'en fout, quoi. Le problème, ce qui est à l'œuvre, ce qui est important, c'est la notion de jouer, quoi. Bien sûr qu'un jeu pourrait être une œuvre d'art, bien sûr qu'un livre pourrait être une œuvre d'art, mais ce qui est important c'est jouer, et donc ce qui est important c'est le game design, quoi. Ce qui est important c'est de comprendre que l'observation d'un système sous contrainte, dégager des relations entre des éléments, non pas les éléments eux-mêmes, mais la relation entre les éléments, et là je parle quasiment de choses ésotériques, quoi. C'est ça qui est important pour moi, et c'est de ça dont je me sers en fait dans mes ateliers avec les gamins, pour stimuler une créativité qui pour moi est morte en ce moment chez les mômes, quoi. C'est-à-dire on n'arrive pas à leur faire comprendre que ce qui est important c'est d'observer les choses, de percevoir les choses, de les assimiler, de les renvoyer et de les recommuniquer au monde pour pouvoir que les gens qui les reçoivent puissent créer des choses dans leur tête, puissent créer des liens, puissent créer des émotions, des choses comme ça, quoi. Donc évidemment la poésie c'est la base. Alors la poésie, moi je dis que je suis poète, mais enfin je veux dire, je pourrais dire autre chose, je peux dire que je suis camionneur, c'est pareil, quoi. D'ailleurs les camionneurs sont poètes. Bon ça c'est Crazy Cat, mon idole, quoi. Ils chantent n'importe quoi, on s'en fout, l'important c'est de chanter, quoi, l'important c'est d'y aller, quoi, l'important c'est de sortir ce qu'on a, et de se mettre en jeu, de se mettre en danger tout le temps, et un jour on s'écroule, parce qu'on est fatigué, parce que tout le monde s'en fout, quoi, et qu'on fait des choses de plus en plus personnelles, de plus en plus violentes, on refuse la compromission, on ne veut pas y aller, et on se dit mais non, et on voit tous les potes réussir, et on se dit mais non, moi je vais rester punk, j'y vais, et puis ben voilà, on finit comme ça, quoi. Mais quelque part, je me dis que tout ça, c'est ce qui rend la vie plus intéressante que l'art, quoi. Et ça, c'est Fluxus, hein, qui dit ça, c'est pas moi, hein, c'est l'art, c'est quelque chose qui rend la vie plus intéressante que l'art, tout simplement. C'est-à-dire que la vie, l'art, c'est un processus qui peut être le game design, qui peut être quelque chose qui stimule la créativité, qui permet de comprendre comment on associe des éléments, quoi, et qui nous permet d'accepter qu'un jour, tout ce qu'on aime disparaîtra, et que tous les gens qu'on aime vont crever, et qu'on va crever aussi, quoi, et que voilà, et qu'il n'y a que ça à foutre de toute manière, quoi. Le reste, ça n'a aucune importance, quoi. Voilà.
One last slide.
Thank you. That was me taking off to nowhere.
Thank you very much. Any question for David?
David, can you give your text in English to the others? They have to read to understand.
Everything I picked up was entirely the non-intellectual components of the presentation.
Yes, I call that emotional intelligence to pretend I'm intelligent, you know.
Bonjour. Juste une question, c'était quoi ton jeu préféré en fait au final?
C'était Loom.
Louvre.
Loom. Brian Moriarty, d'ailleurs Brian Moriarty qui a dit un truc absolument, qui a fait une conférence sur les jeux et l'art la dernière à la GDC, qui a absolument le monde, où lui pensait que l'art c'était quelque chose qui était spirituel en fait. Il se plantait complètement évidemment, parce que c'est la même chose, quoi. Mais en tout cas, Loom c'est quelque chose qui moi m'a beaucoup impressionné, quelque chose qui m'a touché profondément.
Je vais voir. Bonjour, Arnaud d'Ex-Nihilo. Vous avez parlé d'artistes pour qui, d'après vous, qui ont un rapport viscéral à leur œuvre, Mallarmé, Kate Bush, etc. À chaque fois, ce sont des formes d'art qui peuvent être créées par une seule personne, la poésie, la chanson. Est-ce que la difficulté que rencontre le jeu vidéo dans le fait d'avoir des œuvres viscérales ne tient pas à la complexité de l'objet qu'est le jeu vidéo, qui est par essence entre guillemets multimédia?
Ah non, c'est une super question, évidemment. Bah là, on parle du statut de l'auteur en fait, quoi. Moi j'ai la prétention des fois de faire des jeux tout seul, mais c'est même pas vrai parce que j'ai toujours besoin d'un codeur pour m'aider à faire des algos ou des trucs comme ça, parce que je quitte rien, quoi. Mais c'est vrai qu'il y a une forme d'égocentrisme, il y a une forme de... je sais pas, même Kate Bush, elle a besoin de musiciens, quoi. Évidemment, au début, elle travaillait, elle était toute seule au piano, c'était super, mais si elle voulait passer au-delà, il fallait qu'elle s'entoure de gens comme Dan Palmer, des gens vraiment bien, quoi, qui ont enrichi sa musique. Donc, bien sûr qu'il y a une forme de vision, je dirais, au début, qui est centrale, une espèce d'intégrité, mais même dans ces arts-là, je pense qu'il y a fondamentalement une collaboration. Pour le jeu vidéo, je sais pas, c'est plus compliqué, peut-être que c'est une forme qui est encore trop jeune pour pouvoir permettre à des auteurs d'émerger et de tout maîtriser. Ben, je veux dire, on a Eric qui est là, quoi. Je veux dire, moi, je lui ai fait un pep talk à Eric pour lui dire qu'il pouvait faire... Enfin, tu te souviens, je lui ai dit, mais t'es bon, tu peux faire les choses tout seul, t'as pas besoin de personne. Et je pense que aujourd'hui ça arrive, les gens, mais le jeu vidéo est tellement jeune qu'on n'a pas encore l'émergence de visionnaires. Je vous dis, ouais, visionnaire, ouais. Je ne me considère pas du tout comme un visionnaire, que ce soit clair, mais pour répondre à votre question, je pense que la poésie, quand Mallarmé écrivait, elle a eu 2000 ans, 3000 ans derrière pour digérer le fait que les gens puissent parler tous en jeu, quoi. Je veux dire, on est passé de Homère à Sappho, il a fallu combien de temps pour que le jeu arrive dans la poésie, quoi. Avant Homère, avant Sappho, il n'y avait pas de jeu dans la poésie, quoi. Donc j'ai eu, c'est pas un jeu. Oups. Et donc non, moi je pense, enfin je veux dire, je réponds pas vraiment à votre question, mais je pense que c'est trop tôt. On voit des choses arriver et les gens qui disent que qu'ils font les jeux tout seuls, c'est un peu hypocrite des fois, quoi. Des fois ils ont toujours besoin de quelqu'un, quoi. Mais ne serait-ce que pour le test, je veux dire, c'est fondamental. Donc bon, après il y a les histoires d'ego dans les grosses équipes où là ça se déchire entre le département d'art et le département du design et le machin et tout. Mais bon, là on est dans une dimension un peu industrielle de la création, je pense. La création vivante, dans ce côté sanglant, organique, la création dégueulasse, quoi. Je veux dire, où est le pus, où est le vomi, où est le sperme dans la création, dans le jeu vidéo aujourd'hui? Il n'y a pas, c'est complètement stérile, quoi. Et c'est Laurie Anderson qui disait ça, elle disait la virtuelle m'intéressera quand ça commencera à produire sa propre pollution, quoi, sa propre moisissure, sa décrépitude, quoi. Là, on commencera à toucher la vérité du cycle, des choses qui apparaissent et qui disparaissent, quoi. Pour l'instant, il n'y a pas ça dans le jeu, en fait, je pense pas. C'est pas un jugement, hein. J'essaie juste de comprendre pourquoi c'est si dur de faire des jeux tout seul, quoi.
Another question over there.
Je ne me présente pas, je me suis déjà présenté tout à l'heure. J'ai pas changé, c'est toujours. J'ai une remarque et une question. La remarque, c'est sur dernièrement, il y a pas mal de jeux qui ont émergé dans des game jams. Enfin, c'est juste par rapport à une notion de développement en équipe. Des jeux d'ailleurs qui après ont un succès comme ça. Voilà, c'était juste pour le côté contraindre l'équipe de temps, faire un jeu en 12 heures, 24 heures, ça crée une contrainte.
Ouais, il y a beaucoup plus d'énergie en général dans les jams que dans il y a beaucoup d'énergie, il y a beaucoup de vie, ouais, bien sûr.
Et la question c'était sur les enfants, est-ce que la créativité des enfants, est-ce que c'est un point de vue, c'est dogmatique, en fait, l'iPad c'est la mort de la créativité des enfants?
C'est une observation, en fait. En faisant des workshops, je me rends compte que c'est moi. J'ai fait jouer à Dixit pour mesurer leur niveau de. Tout le monde voit ce que c'est Dixit? Une espèce de jeu de plateau super cool où en fait on doit utiliser l'imagination pour aller au-delà de l'image qu'on voit, pour décrire des choses, créer des métaphores, comme ça. Au niveau de 10 ans, les gamins qui sont incapables de se projeter dans quoi que ce soit d'autre que ce qu'ils voient, en fait. Donc moi je me sers du game design parce que le game design c'est quelque chose qui dédramatise vachement l'art, justement, qui dédramatise le fait qu'il faut écrire, qui dédramatise le fait qu'il faut dessiner. Les gens, oui, mais je sais pas bien dessiner, ou je sais pas bien écrire. C'est pas grave, parce que le but, c'est pas de bien dessiner ou de bien écrire, le but, c'est de faire un jeu. Donc, ça les désinhibe, en fait. Et ça stimule vachement les mômes, quoi. Et je me suis rendu compte d'un truc complètement dément chez les mômes, c'est qu'on a beau leur donner tout un tas de beaux papiers, de beaux crayons, et on leur dit, allez-y, faites-moi ce que vous voulez, et les gamins, ils vont faire Dora, ils vont faire Yu-Gi-Oh, ils vont faire des trucs qu'ils voient à la télé. Par contre, on leur donne un crayon, on leur donne un stylo, et on leur dit, faites un éléphant, et ils vont faire tout sauf un éléphant, quoi. Donc, la contrainte du game design, la contrainte crée chez le gamin la nécessité de s'échapper, la volonté de liberté de l'enfant, de l'esprit de l'enfant. En fait, il faut le pousser à vouloir partir, quoi. Il faut le pousser à vouloir aller loin. Et ça, aujourd'hui, dans le système éducatif, on ne le fait pas. Au contraire, on les attrape, on les laisse parquer là-dedans, quoi. Et mon but à moi, c'est de stimuler la créativité pour que ces gamins, quand ils aient 16 ans, 17 ans, 18 ans, commencent à s'interroger sur les formes d'expression différentes. Mais à la base, j'ai l'impression que si on les cadre dans des formes un peu obsolètes pour eux, d'art passéiste, quoi, on les perd en fait, quoi. Et je me suis rendu compte de la puissance du game design, et c'est incroyable, quoi. Les gamins, ils font des trucs de fou, quoi. Et ça m'a vraiment marqué. Et je me suis dit, waouh, là, il y a un truc énorme à faire, quoi. C'est magique, quoi. Et bon, après, c'est ma méthode, hein. Je dis pas que c'est. Voilà, il y a des profs d'art plastique qui s'en sortent très bien, mais en même temps, j'ai l'impression qu'on a affaire à une génération qui a besoin de ça aujourd'hui parce qu'on a trop dramatisé l'art, quoi. C'est enquisté, c'est tout pourri, quoi. C'est plus une pub, c'est moisi, quoi.
Dino has a question.
It's possible that this was just asked. I wouldn't know, but there was something that struck me as I read that, and it was actually troubling me. The first thing I really respect and agree with is that you're treating the whole thing as a journey. It's one of the things you say. It's almost like the process is more important than the artifact. And I can relate to that. And it feels like it's a search for something. So my question is, search for what? That's what's troubling me after having read that. Any idea what it is we're looking for?
What? I don't know. I mean, if I know, I would be a guru or something, and I would pretend to say I know some kind of a truth to be attained. But I have no idea. I just know by instinct, by gut instinct, and emotional, intellectual process that there is something to be found somewhere, up there, down there. I don't know. I'm going for it anyway. Maybe I'll die trying.
But I agree. It feels like that. It's like you're compelled to search. But it's just that, but we don't know what it is we're looking for. And that's kind of like, maybe in a sense that's another definition of art, I don't know.
I guess it's a kind of, spirituality, and I'm not talking about spirituality as a religious belief or anything. I'm just telling that if soul, we are not blessed with a soul like all the religion wants us to think. It's just like it's a muscle. It's something that we need to train in order to see things that we don't know are yet there. But we need to take this journey, we need to take it, and we need to train the soul, otherwise we'll be stuck with the material world, and material world is, as an end game, it sucks.
The material world is in fact the intellectual world, in a sense.
So
it's like a war, it's like a kind of a conflict between the material, the spiritual,
no, it's not
the intellectual, the artistic.
No, it's not a conflict because I'm not seeing the body as a problem, I'm seeing the body as a vessel. I'm not saying the material world is bad, I'm saying that only material world is bad. So the conflict, what you're terming conflict, is not conflict, it's tension between two paradoxes. Yeah. And I do believe that reality and spirituality is based on this paradox, and that the paradox, that if we embrace the paradox of life, the paradoxes of our minds and the paradoxes of our idea and conceptions of the world, maybe we'll be better to talk about things and get along better together,
And I think it's all about collaboration, especially with other kind of artists and art forms, and this is something what Tale of Tales are doing, and I don't know if you're doing it as well, that you work out with other people together, or you were working with other people together, like whatever with dancers or actors and or script writers, like Unmanned, it's done as well with a script writer together, so the whole story from Mario Industria, he's talking, it's 3 o'clock. And but my question is, I mean, it's all good about art and everything, but for art there is a market, but there is no market for art games, right?
I mean, you know the Miles Davis. I took a picture of Miles Davis. Okay, the jazz album that is regarded as one of the finest ever created is also the most successful. That's Kind of Blue. So actually, it is possible for something that is very, very strong art to also have a commercial success. I don't think I think there tends to be a tendency, there's undeniable, there's a tendency that one of the problems with art is it needs to be understood. You need to have that good, strong communication. And it's rare, that communication is really rare.
I think it's very, very important that all this stuff is happening right now. And I mean, the medium is pretty young, and what this discussion is kind of boring in a way. But I think it's very, very important that, especially in the art market, I mean, all the collectors and all these people who are interested in games, it's a kind of a niche group. I mean, this is something what has to change, and I think it's changing as soon the other generation, maybe not us, but the younger generation, the digital natives, are maybe the next collectors, and they understand what is art. Really, they don't ask, because I mean, when I see Neon Cat or something like that, I mean, this is a start, all these memes and all these super cut technique videos and everything. This is the digital nature. The kids are using totally differently the tools, and this is something where I think where we had this discussion yesterday. I mean, game designer uses the tools what they have, as a painter, the color and the pencil. And this is something what most of the people don't understand, and I think this is what I think why they don't understand it, because there is no reach and there are not the right festivals right now. And what I think is we need more kind of festivals who are kind of developing this kind of hype around this kind of art form, because what I just see is conventions talking about business, talking about money, but it's not about the beauty of games, talking about the beauty of games and playing games. And this is something maybe it's changed in the next years.
I think it's necessary. If you look at what happened in the 60s with music, there was a period where the singer-songwriter was like highly regarded. You know, there's the time when Bob Dylan came out and the rest of it. But there was supporting that, there was also the culture, where there were, you know, the rock festivals, the Woodstocks type of thing. You know, there was the whole background culture that supported that. And it feels like at the moment we're kind of a bit empty. I mean, if I was to use my method of whatever describing it, it feels all a little bit too intellectual right now in the mainstream. And so the less intellectual games, the ones that are there just to impress you, but not in a not in an intellectual way, just like Journey, for example. I mean, it was an incredibly great game, but didn't have a great commercial success. It's because the market doesn't know how to absorb that, I think, anymore. And I think you're absolutely right that we need to kind of educate. The whole of society has moved away from this. It's kind of increasingly seems to be going away from art since, well, for the last like 20, 30 years. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels like that's a trend. So I don't know, what can we do to fix it? How can we make art games the in thing?
I mean, one of the things you definitely need more awards in this kind of categories. Really kind of focusing on the art, on the uniqueness of games, and on the innovative part of games. Because when you check because I'm always comparing film festivals with game festivals, and I think we can learn a lot from the film festivals, how they make a hype around games, how they make a hype around film and the whole industry and about the whole artistic value and the cultural value. But I don't see yet a festival, even when we have the Indicate and the IGF and everything, and it's cool, and we have this and we have a maze, but there is no recognition. The people are just thinking it's still a game, you know. I mean, it's just about fun, but they mostly don't understand that there is much more in there, and this is something what we can solve. Probably when there is a funding system for indie game developers, a real funding system, like whatever, like the World Cinema Fund or something like that, where institutions coming together and trying to help those artists to really kind of make make whatever the marketing, and as well, maybe there are labels. I mean, I talked yesterday to another guy. He was at the table. I forgot the name. Maybe he's no. And he was really kind of thinking. Yeah, it's KISS, and it's a kind of a label, you know. And he's coming from the here over there, and he's kind of coming from the music background, and wants to build a kind of a label system like in the music for games. And this is something what I think it's very interesting. So, and just to create a kind of a critical mass around this kind of games, art games.
I think you're right, and there is actually a desire for it, because those who do get into games like Journey, they really appreciate it. So
I think also the problem is that all the indie game festivals, they accept a very broad range of games. Like they're accepting also indie games that are very commercial or very just commercial. I mean, and I think it's not very selective sometimes. You see games, when I see it like the IGF, for example, I see games and I think, wow, that's special, that's something I would say it's art for me. But other games are just like, that's just crap for me. It's just a subjective view, but I think it's, if a festival manages to start something like this, so you know all the games there have some artistic value for a broad range of people who are interested in interesting special games, then maybe maybe the Amaze Festival goes in this direction. But I think it's still too mixed with like especially the indie label is just everything that is not AAA. So I think that's probably one of the worst things to say to a game it's an indie game, because it also doesn't mean anything.
And this is why Amaze Festival is not called anymore Amaze Indie Connect, it's called just Amaze Berlin, because I just like to, it is called Independent Video Games Festival, because I don't like the name indie anymore so much, because it just sounds sweet and little. I mean, what you guys, all the indies here are doing, I mean, these are big games. I mean, you are working a lot and hard on this, you put a lot of effort in there to send out the message to millions of people, and I think this should be the goal. I mean, I'm a game designer, I'm an artist, and I'm not an indie, you know? I mean, I know it sounds a little bit like kitsch.
I think you're right. I think there's another aspect too, which is that by saying there's a distinction between AAA and indie, it means that it's impossible for a AAA studio to create a game that is essentially, from an artistic point of view, an indie title, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's an artificial distinction, I have to agree.
Kerry's already at the microphone.
Yeah.
Do anybody has a question? Please.
I want to
have to
remember
finish?
everybody that Mario wins a big prize at the EIGD last year. First. But yes, some question, and we have to 5 minutes to take question.
I just have a question. Matthew from Gumi Europe. So I'm not really an indie, I'm working for a Japanese company. We have one definition of art, but I would like to know the other definitions, because the one I heard is about art and communication, while the other two just said that we have to focus on game designs, but they never said that game designs could be an art or could be communication, etc. So just like to ask their point of view in terms of what the definition is for art. And regarding the market, what you said before, I lived in Japan, I'm living in France now. It's two different markets in terms of art for paintings or things like that, and in terms of game. So don't you see that it might be difficult for an indie art game made in, let's say, Europe to perform well in another market? Or for a Japanese, you had a Japanese game made like a few years ago, it was just black screen with just noise. I don't know if you heard about it. That was a Japanese art game that never succeeded in Europe because it was too weird for us. Do you think you can combine your European art style with the East, and what is art for you?
Can I I think combine both of those together. I mean, the way I view it is that the communication is really what the art is. Without the communication, there isn't any. So if you make a piece of art and keep it hidden away and it's not communicating, it's not art. So the way that connects with the cultures is that if you communicate something that a culture cannot hear because their culture prevents them from seeing it, then the communication is blocked, and in that context it's not art to them.
Just to your question, I don't think that artists are thinking about markets and whatever localization and stuff like that. They just do what they want to do. And I think as an artist, I mean as a painter, I mean you get known because of the art. And if it's he will never produce something for Japan, or he will never produce something for Paris just to be a good artist in a kind of a certain community. He wants to do it because he just can't do it. And this is kind of the same, I think, with game designers, especially with coders, I guess, because creative coding is an art form by itself. So, but most of the people don't understand it yet now. I mean, you see that at the media art festivals and everything, and when you look at open frameworks and what the people are doing right now, they also, and I mean all the collectives. I didn't do my presentation because I mean the panel discussion was much more interesting than my talk. And the collectives like One Life Remains from Paris, and or Weird Kids. It's a kind of international community, and what we have Copenhagen Game Collectives. They're just doing it. They're coming together and they're creating playful pieces. And this is, I think, it's a new art form by itself. And there is no region in there, and they just do it, they bring it to festivals, they show it everywhere. I mean, it's a lot of effort, of course, to travel around the world, but maybe some games are just for the festival. But I mean, this is something what creates subculture and culture.
I think, just to your question, one definition of art, I don't know who said this or who wrote this, but I think it's interesting because it says that it's art as soon as the people that make it, the intellectual elite, and also the public says it's art. And if every one of these people says it's art, then it's art. I think
we would disagree on that. It's a valid art.
Yeah.
Consideration.
I don't know, I think it's interesting because it means that it's just subjective in the community what is art, and it changes depending on what people think it is. So this is why I think it's interesting. I don't want to say this is the definition, this is why I said in my presentation that I don't want to talk about definitions of art.
Okay, one last question and then we have to close the round.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted really to take up Dino's music analogy, and Kind of Blue was recorded in 1958.
Yeah, it's about that.
And taking Dylan forward to someone like Nick Drake, for example, took 30 years for him to be discovered.
Yes.
My key problem with the whole concept is how you can get that longevity or that discoverability later when it's such a fast-moving with new formats and new genres, and I don't know how the longevity of the music industry.
That one is very interesting because we have a problem with our art, which is that it doesn't last because of the platforms disappearing. I guess they get emulated now, so they can kind of survive in that way.
And retro is like indie, is another label that is probably what we would like to lose sooner rather than later.
It would be fascinating if a game that was relatively unknown 30 years ago suddenly appeared on emulators and everybody was hooked and playing it and became really famous after the author died. It'll happen one day, I'm sure.
I would just use an analogy, the Nick Drake analogy. Nick Drake used to say brighter later, right? That's an album. I think we just need to hope that everything will be right.
Okay, everybody.